Hello everyone, my name is Emily Munoz and today I'm going to be talking to you all about lesson planning and session strategies. So before I get started, just a little bit about me. I have been doing SI for 2 years now. I currently SI only for the cognitive psychology class, but in the past I've worked with general psychology students as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So this is what a lesson plan looks like. This is not mine. This example can actually be found in your SI Leader Manual. You'll see at the top here, you have a little bit of information that you need to fill in, and you need to answer some questions about the things that you've done this week, including have you distributed the sign-in sheets, have you prepared any handouts or worksheets, and did you promote your sessions and office hours in class, and if so, how did you do it? That's something that you need to be doing every week. You need to let students know about when your sessions are, and this can be done through email, or you can also even write a little note on the whiteboard in the classroom reminding students when and where your sessions are. So on the left side, you're going to write a little bit about the content that you need to cover that week. So this can be either a broad concept or it can be parts of the chapter. And then you're going to list some higher order questions. And when I write these higher order questions, I tend to ask myself, what questions should students be able to answer by the time they leave that session? This person wrote several questions, but just depending on the level of difficulty, that will impact how many questions you need to write for that week. So on the right side, you're going to give a little bit of information about how you're going to accomplish, those goals that you have set with the content you want to cover. And we're going to talk about session strategies and the things that you can do in your session to accomplish this. So more on that later. So just some tips for writing lesson plans. You want to make use of the syllabus to help plan your sessions. You want to make sure everything that you're doing in the SI session fits well with what's being done in class that week. You're also going to want to get input from the professor. A lot of these professors have been teaching these courses for several years, and they have observed patterns in students, and they know historically what students struggle with the most and what concepts you need to emphasize. So in your weekly or biweekly meetings with your professor, be sure to ask, and get their input. Also, challenge yourself to include an activity that appeals to all learning styles. So this goes back to the VARC that you may or may not have talked about yet, but everybody learns differently. We have visual learners, people who learn better through listening, people who read and write, and also people who learn better kinesthetically, so tactile, things that are tangible. So I would definitely encourage you to try to include activities or things that appeal to all different learning styles. Also be flexible. A lot of times I remember in my first semester, I would prepare these lesson plans and I was like, oh, these are awesome activities that we're going to do. And then we wouldn't end up doing them because that's not what the students wanted to cover. And that's okay. A lot of times I've noticed that there are two different types of students in sessions. So there's people that come to sessions and they already have a topic in mind, like they are struggling with something and that's what they want to cover, and that's okay. But you also have students who come to SI and they haven't really been keeping up with the readings, or maybe they've missed a few lectures, so they don't even know what questions they need to be asking. So those are the times or the instances when your lesson plans will be really, really handy. So session strategies. You're more than welcome to turn to page 111 in your SI Leader Manual and follow along with me. That's where all this information is coming from. So just for the sake of time, I have not included every session strategy, of course. I've just picked out the ones that are my favorite and that have worked for me personally. So be sure to review them all though. So for problem solving, these strategies work best, I think, for math problems or things that involve a great deal of critical thinking. So summarizing the steps and procedures. What you're going to do is you're going to have students review the process of learning that has taken place in the session. So sometimes you'll give students a problem or a question, and they get the answer right, and that's great. But that question may or may not be on the exam, so they need to be able to recreate that process when it comes down to test taking time, right? So peer lessons is also a great strategy to use in session. I like to use any kind of strategy that encourages the students teaching each other and also, collaborating. I think that's really helpful for them in the long run. So assigning group. So what you're going to do is you're going to assign groups or individuals a problem or a question and have them work through it, and then afterwards they're going to, present to the rest of the group. They're going to explain how they arrived at that answer. So a lot of what we do in SI, the goal is to make students independent learners. We want to give them skills that they can carry forward into the classes that may not have SI. So these are some study techniques that you can share with them. I like to do predicting the test question. One of the professors that I've worked with, he has a very unique testing style. So after the first test, a lot of the students like to, they like to pretend to be Dr. Moreno or Dr. Socolillo and kind of pretend to ask questions in the way that they would. And so they're going to share these questions with each other, and then we'll answer them as a group. Incomplete outline, this is one I like a lot, and it's something I've used with the general psychology class. You create a set of incomplete lecture notes, and then you have the students fill them in either together or on their own. So this will require them to look at their textbook, look at their lecture notes to complete this, what's missing in the outline. And actually, just something fun to do. I like to do this incomplete outline on a Google document and then invite students in the session to edit it if they have their laptops. It works really well, and then they can take it with them later on and add more information to it, and then they have a review guide. Group collaborative techniques. As I mentioned, I really like doing the group strategies and encouraging them to get to know each other, because SI sessions, they only meet 3 times a week. So if they can kind of form a little study group that they like and study at other times that are convenient for them, I think that's great. So definitely try to implement some of these strategies. So divide and conquer is one I use a lot, especially because the course that I do SI for is very reading intensive, and some of the articles can be a bit complicated and confusing and can take a while to get through. So what I do is I divide, academic articles work really well for this because you have like an abstract, an introduction, a method section. So I divide it up by section, and I ask a group of students or a student to provide a summary of that section and then share that summary with the rest of the group. Think, pair, share is a good one as well. I like to give students a concept or a question to think about, and then they'll think about it individually using their own set of notes, and then ask them to get into pairs and then discuss it with the person they're working with, and then lastly they'll present that information to the rest of the group. Visual aids. As I mentioned, everybody learns differently, and some people do really well with visual information, and so when it comes time to taking the test, they're kind of visualizing what they've seen on the dry erase board or things that they've drawn in their notes. So I definitely like to use these. If you've ever sat in on one of my sessions, there's a lot of board work going on, both individually and with pairs or groups. So hierarchies. Hierarchies work well for things that, for like these broad concepts that also break down into sub-concepts. So you can kind of map that out, and it's a really great way to take things from like the more broad level to the more specific level. So making complex things a little bit more simplified. And then concept mapping is something I do a lot. You start with a circle in the middle, and then from there you'll branch out to the other subtopics. So an example of this, I use this a lot in general psychology when we're talking about psychological disorders. So the concept in the middle is going to be psychological disorders, and then I'll branch out from there and we'll talk about mood disorders. And then for mood disorders, it gets a little bit more specific to depression and bipolar disorder. Anyways, I won't talk to you anymore about psychology, but that's just one example of how you can use either one of these visual aids. And really, with visual aids, you can make them your own. You're familiar with the course material, and so just do it how you would visualize it, and that will seem to work. So recall, review. So this is a good way to gauge how prepared students are for their upcoming exams. I like to do informal quizzes. I do this almost every SI session just to review what we've done. So this is just a little verbal quiz with questions that you've prepared ahead of time, or can be things that you come up with on the fly, just depending. And so the questions should be brief and just require multiple choice answers, and then you can kind of discuss afterwards. I also, for the general psychology students, I really like to do Jeopardy. It's really fun. They seem to enjoy it because there's kind of a competitive aspect there. But it does require a great deal of prep. So what I have done in the past is that I have used a template that you can access online if you just do a quick Google search. Just Google Jeopardy template, and one will pop up, and you can fill in your questions. And the questions obviously should vary in difficulty. And I think you're going to need about 35 to 45 questions and answers. So, but the good thing is, once you do it one semester, you'll have that material to use, in the upcoming semester. So, go ahead and put in the work now, and then you'll have material for next semester. So just a quick recap of everything we've talked about today. So just, the main takeaways, I guess. Be prepared. Always be prepared for what you're going to do in your session, but also be flexible with your sessions. You kind of have to be intuitive sometimes and get a sense of what the students are wanting to do that session. Also, encourage students to collaborate and teach each other. In my opinion, the best sessions are the ones where I do the least amount of talking. I like students to discuss this information, because if the students can teach each other and they can verbalize these concepts, put some of these concepts into their own words, then they're going to do well on their exams. So always encourage them to teach each other and to collaborate. It's going to be more helpful for them when it comes to test taking time. And also get the professor's input. As I mentioned, the professors know their students pretty well, so they know what they're going to struggle with when it comes to testing time. Also, be creative and combine elements of the session strategies, or come up with your own. Sometimes I do a lot of board work. I split the session into groups, and then there's kind of an element of divide and conquer there, but they're also using concept mapping. So, just get creative with it and, mix it up a little bit. I think your students will appreciate that. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions for me, feel free to contact me, or if you see me around campus, just say hi. I look forward to working with you all this semester and getting to know you during the training. So, yeah. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.